Russia was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And they'd say, oh, but aren't you so glad that you're in America? I said, well, I know a lot of Russian filmmakers. They have a lot more freedom than I have. All they have to do is be careful about criticizing the government.
Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. I know people are saying, hey, are these new intros? Not necessarily. There's other shows we used to call them totally different things, and we're kind of putting a lot of stuff under the moniker of just This is Revolution. But I do have all these intros that we made, and this is all the same music that you guys complain about all the time. And I love it. I love having more things for people to whine about. Before we start, if you're new to the channel, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell so you're alerted whenever we go live. I bet a lot of you that have been watching this channel for a while forget we do things on Wednesday. Usually, Wednesday is taken over by the less melanated members of the TIR family. Everyone is busy. Everyone is doing something. And this was a show that Gene wanted to put together, and I was more than happy to fill in. So does this mean I'm gentrifying White Guy Wednesday? Would that be a reverse gentrification? I don't know. Doesn't matter. My channel, and this is just a Jason takeover. So for those of you expecting Gene, expecting Kuba, expecting Varn, no, all those guys are gone. I'm the captain now. I would like to send a massive shout out to everyone that does subscribe to the channel on YouTube and Twitch and wherever you get your audio only podcasts. Of course, much love to the patron community. You guys are the fuel in the TIR engine that keeps us going. If you would like to be part of the TIR family, there's only one way to become a patron. For as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year, you can have access to champagne rooms past and present. You can be in the live virtual audience for the Mau Mau Hour with Pascal Robert. Many of you guys caught that last Mau Mau. Pascal and Cornell West. What a great show. I cut the best clip of that show. I think it goes live Friday. So excited. There's a clip right now. Hope you guys are checking it out. Please share it with your friends. Where Toussaint and I get down to the nitty gritty of what really happened to Mitch McConnell and give you some insights how his security team handles these situations. That clip is up right now. Please check that out. Also, when you're a patron, you can join us for movie night. We're going to talk about film tonight. We have movie night. You guys are fans of Christopher Guest movies. I love Spinal Tap, Best in Show, Waiting for Guffman. It's a toss-up between those three for me. But a filmmaker named Rusty Cundiff, who you might know as the guy that made Tales from the Hood. You definitely know him from the Chappelle shows that he directed. He also directed Chris Rock show when he had a show on HBO. He made a movie in the mid-90s that I think is still very relevant called Fear of a Black Hat. We'll be watching that. I confirmed it with Jeremy this Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. We watch the film together, and then we all have a fun conversation about it. You guys do what you do. The reason why I love the TIR family. You keep me cracking the hell up with your comments. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say on this movie. So now that we got that all out of the way, Let's talk about the tyranny of the blockbuster. With the mega merger of Disney buying the rights to Star Wars, expanding on maybe one of the most well-known movie franchises of all time, and the rise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, are we all tired of the blockbuster? Has the superhero genre jumped the shark, or is this just the modern version of what we saw in action films in the 1980s? In the late 70s, a summer blockbuster was born out of a bit of a happy accident, as the big budget tentpole movies for major studios were reserved for the final 3 months of the year. Going over budget with Star Wars and not finishing on time prompted the studio to release the film in May of 77 instead of fall of 76. Movies like Jaws and Star Wars, Alien, 2001 were directed by young filmmakers who had creative visions, and their movies brought in big dollars for the studios. But with the success of the latest summer smash, Barbie, it's just another extremely famous intellectual property in film. Great film is still being made, but most of it will never see theaters and go straight to streaming. Is that worse than the world of straight to video and cable? With cable and video stores, you had a very limited amount of content, and cable curated your viewing experience. Do many of these independent films go unseen because they won't show up in an algorithm that is filled with binge watching the same shows and constantly watching movies you've already seen? Writers and actors are striking, but does the viewing audience care when they have at their disposal millions of hours of content to be viewed on numerous platforms? We bring in a friend of the show and a friend in real life, Hollywood editor and filmmaker. You may know him from Midnight Extravaganza. You may know him from his weekly appearances on The Majority Report with Sam Cedar. I know him because he made me laugh until I cried after the live show in New York. Matthew Weiss, aka Matthew Flim Guy.
Hold it down for the completely unmelanated. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
We're going to have all the white guys on. Varn was
Sort
going
of
to have...
albino. I'm basically your least melanated possible person to have.
But
I'm honored.
look, Matthew, you know what you are. You are a funny guy. We share a lot of the same tastes in music. You do a lot of stuff with one of my best friends on the planet, Conan Neutron. Another person that I love having movie and music debates with. First of all, he's seen so many movies, and he's just opinionated and fun. And it's one of those things where we can scream and yell and then just laugh right after, which if you've hung out with Conan, you know what that's like.
I have. He recently came through New York. We did a live movie night extravaganza before I went and saw his band play. It was a really fun time. A couple good nights in a row.
I was.
We did Mean Streets, so that was fun. We did a lot of hey oh
hey hey. My co-host and very good friend Pascal Robert gets Vietnam-like flashbacks whenever he hears a white ethnic accent. So if he hears that, it's like, oh.
You mean somebody like pretending to have one, or like when real people have these?
When real people have one, because he just remembers, growing up in Queens in the 80s in New York. Hey, it's a moolie. Hey, it's a smart moulignon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I want you moonwalk over here, Einstein.
That is a good Eddie Murphy doing the Italian racist guy impression right there. Yeah.
You're welcome for all your discount Eddie Murphy needs.
So happy to be here. Glad to fill in when you guys need to, keep it light.
Well, this is, we had a kind of a more fun conversation that is becoming more and more real as we're seeing, we talked about college football realignment and venture capitalism jumping into the college football world. So of course it's a fun conversation that gets a little more serious. And there's something really serious going on right now before we even get into the Barbieheimer. I believe that's what you people call it.
What is that?
I don't. It's something I've seen people talk about, the Barbie and Oppenheimer, because they're doing.
You mean the savior of the cinematic experience? Yeah.
I,
I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him, so I can't really talk too much about it. But I can.
you know what? Now I don't feel
Comment.
bad. I don't feel bad now because I was afraid you were gonna like crap on me for not seeing him. But
No.
what are your thoughts on the current labor unrest in Hollywood?
Well, I'll just start at the basic personal level, which is that I, as an editor, I have been told by my agents that to expect a slowdown in work, even when it was being anticipated, which is back in the fall. I was wrapping up work on a previous project and looking for my next thing, and it was told to me like people are kind of unsure of the landscape right now, so that's putting the brakes on. So I basically haven't booked another editing gig for the last 8-9 months. So I'm not on strike, but I'm like on the trickle down effect, feeling the brunt of it. So on that level, I hope it ends soon, but at the same time, I support their goals. It's absolutely ridiculous what is being asked of the actors and the writers to give up what had already been given up and what had been tried to be established as a new norm. These sort of, not to get too inside baseball, but these mini writer rooms where they're basically trying to gig out the job of writing a script. And, then we go into the AI thing and, you're licensing your face in perpetuity. So it's all crazy dystopian things that cannot be allowed to occur, even in a commercial cinema. And my whole thing as Matthew the Film Guy, I'm not like here to wave the flag for Hollywood commercial cinema, but if things go the way that they want and it just becomes completely financialized into this sort of a serfdom that they want it to be, that's just completely closing the door on any even pretensions to art or something serious or something more meaningful happening. And so it's going to be bad news for everybody if this strike goes towards what the AMPTP wants. So I'm all for it. And it seems to me that they're starting to get some movement. I heard today that they're actually going to be having negotiations again, which they were just stonewalling for a while with the Writers Guild. So hopefully they will start feeling the pain eventually, but your guess is as good as mine. And personally, I'm prepared for the long haul. I have other things I can do to make money, thankfully, but I hope they go all the way with it and don't sell themselves short, because it's a bad route that they're asking this all to go.
I was Ben Burgess and I and Jordan Dubin, we were all out a few weeks ago celebrating something for Ben. I won't get into it, but a friend of mine is a comedian.
Congratulations, or I'm sorry, as the case may be.
Both.
Okay.
Both. A little bit of both. A little bit from column A, a little from column B. More so on the A. A friend of mine is a comedian. He works at the Comedy Store, and we got to hang out over there. And his girlfriend, who I met for the first time, this is a good friend of mine from high school, is a writer, and she's on strike. And we were talking about the writer's strike. And I was giving her, my opinion, and I felt like, I mentioned a little bit in the intro. I feel that there's so much content at people's disposal, and much like with music, film has become ubiquitous. It's whenever we want it, however we want it. We take it for granted. I don't know if the experience of the theater is the same in a post-peak COVID world.
I barely go to real theaters these days, and since I'm living in New York, basically it's limited to like repertory and foreign films. At this point, I'm waiting for anything that's seemingly a blockbuster to come out on home video some way or other. So yeah.
Do you feel like, because I feel this way, I feel like people that are actually making, I'm plug. In the next month, I'll be finishing my feature-length video essay documentary, Kayfabe, on the way we consume media. And I'm actually going to do screenings for it. I'm not going to put it out on a platform. I'm going to go kind of on a bit of a tour.
Awesome.
All over.
Real indie.
These posters behind me aren't because I stayed at home. You know what I mean? So it's the only way I know how to do things like this. As fun as it is to be able to do this show, I'd much rather do it live. We're actually in talks of doing another live show. I feel like making a film might go the way of vinyl, where it's like a certain kind of experience, right?
Yeah, Look, I've been talking about this ever since I basically heard a film scholar who I admire talk about it maybe 25 years ago. That we have this conception that really since we'll get into it, the Blockbuster era, somewhere in the 80s when greed became good and everybody thought that they were a stockbroker, that watching the box office, everyone's like, oh, this box office did that box office and this one did this one, and we're talking about the business of film. We have this idea that this is the number one judgment of quality is how popular it is and how much money it makes, when that's only just one metric you could really look at, obviously, right? So I was not ever against, and I've been accused of being elitist or pretentious or a gatekeeper or whatever, but I don't mind personally if it's a really good movie worth seeing, going, instead of seeing one every month, or one every week, seeing one a month and paying 3 times as much, like when you go to the ballet or the opera or to a concert, making it more of an event, making it more of something important, that you're not just whatever's on, I'll just go see it, which is how it used to be. You're going directly for this thing, and with the promise that you're going to be given something worth your time, not just something that, oh, the trailer looked cool, so I'll munch on some mindless popcorn and just do whatever afterwards and forget all about it. If it's something worthy of my time and being given something unique, something that gets me out of the house, especially at this point, I don't mind if it is something more along the lines of some of these other art forms that maybe have become a little more esoteric or not necessarily as popular, but still been able to be taken seriously. And again, side issue, some of them or a lot of them are funded by public money, which I think is another sort of way to address this issue. But be that as it may, going to an event like you're going to put on is something I would much more likely do, which is even what I am doing. When Lincoln Center does a retrospective and plays Bellatar's movies, I go see it. He's there. It's something special. So I don't mind paying a little extra if it's worth it. And this idea that, every week new movies come out, just go see the next movie and every movie gets a review, it's a system that I think should go away in some way or other. And I wouldn't mind.
It's interesting that you mentioned, that when we're talking about experiences, and even before the shelter in place, there were movie theaters that weren't, megaplexes with, 25 theaters, smaller movie houses. And I've seen like kind of older theaters that for whatever reason stood the test of time, changing things up, having very comfortable seats, having people bring food out to you.
The iPick, I love the iPick personally.
You make that move because people aren't coming out, right?
Yeah.
When I worked at EDC, which is a super large music festival in Las Vegas now. It's when I was there, it was the biggest in North America. But it's held at a racetrack. And when I was I'm in a control room basically with all the financial people that own the racetrack and stuff, or run food and beverage there, right? Doing numbers, and we're talking about stuff. And they were telling me once when I was there, we're walking around the track. They're like, "This is where we're putting in a swimming pool because we need to bring a younger crowd because no one wants to see NASCAR." So we're all these accoutrements are added to something as, I don't know, down home. What is more American than NASCAR, right? It starts off bootleggers trying to outrun the cops
into Duke Boys.
Its own sanctioned thing, right? But
yeah,
it's lost some appeal because people crave. Again, I worked for some time in live production. People crave VIP experiences, even in a place like the movie theater. What does that even say about the way we consume cinema? That we need to have so many accoutrements?
Well, I will tell you this: when I do go to a place like Alamo Drafthouse or the iPick is really where I've mostly spent my time. I don't go see any movie that I'm really interested in paying like close attention to, right? Like, because I'm being served food and drinks and desserts and pizza, and things are falling on me. Like it's not the thing on the screen is not the full draw. You follow me? It's like if I miss two of the punches that are thrown and the explosions, it's not gonna throw me off the experience. So I'm looking down. So it becomes another thing. That's not necessarily what I'm suggesting is a way to address our mindless blockbuster culture, but it was successful in getting me to go pay maybe $10 more a ticket for a recliner. And honestly, in my old man shakes fist at cloud kind of thing is that they in the iPic they have like secluded booths, so it's like two pods, so you and your date are just, you can't hear people talking, because that's a whole other road that has been just destroyed, is like people don't talk in movies and hold up their phones. So it had other things to it that were valuable, but at the end of the day, the movies were still the same crap that we're playing everywhere. So it's not addressing that per se. It is just tarting up the going out experience.
I mean, I grew up in a city called Richmond, California in the 90s, and talking in the movie theater was something that you were going to tolerate or you were going to get shot or beat up. So
now, well, I did get the chance to go to a few movies in like Times Square before it was completely shut down, where the talking to the movies was an art form.
Yes,
it was a give and a take, and you knew you were on stage, so you were talking as much for everyone around you as for the person next to you. That I have. If you're going to bring the quality, I have no problem with that. If you're going to add to the experience, and I can even remember some of the things that have happened in movies where people were talking that were funnier than the movie. That's fine. That's great. That's a give and a take. But I'm talking about like, what does he mean? Why is he going in there? Like grandma doesn't understand what's happening, or really like this one's the worst. Like, hello? No. I'm just in a movie. What's up? I literally have heard people do that in New York City. Say, no, I'm just in a movie. Like, it's like, can you talk? Yeah, I'm just in a movie. So these kinds of things that's
when Matthew turns around and hits him with a.
We're coming for you.
I mean, let's just say I'm a peace-loving man for the most part, but I've never been as close to a public punch-up as one of these movies. It was Syriana. Remember that movie, Syriana?
I do.
Yeah, I literally was just like, it was like the Seinfeld thing. Is first I gave the turn, and that didn't do anything, and then I said like, "Do you mind?" And then it was like, yeah.
And then you had to hear the conversation about you behind you.
It literally
some asshole in front of me wanted to turn around.
No, the kid. It was a kid. Obviously, it was like a teenager, and he was like, "You're not my dad." And I said, "Well, somebody has to be."
He's so lucky it was you sitting in front of him, because I would have went on a whole tirade.
Nah, because he's not lucky, because most people just don't even bother to just address it. It's like I used to work, my first job in the industry was as an usher in high school at a movie theater that still would bring you to your seats with a flashlight during the trailer. So like if it got dark, you'd say like, "Can I help you find a seat? Do you want to sit?" But like real ushers. And then we would walk the theater a couple times during the show to see if people were like putting their feet up or talking, and we would say shush, and we had the ability to ask people to leave. So I say bring that back. You may at this point need a bouncer more than just like a teenage kid, but I say bring back a bouncer. But maybe we're off topic a little bit here.
There's something to be said about like, I can leave my phone somewhere and not give a damn. I don't sleep with it. Even if it's an alarm for me, it's in another room. Like I'm going to have to get out of my bed and go walk to go turn it off.
Well, you're a stronger man than me. You're a stronger man than me.
Oh, try it, man. It's a game changer.
Yeah. Well, and this actually does dovetail kind of with our conversation, which is like you said, like movies are getting this way and that way. We're competing with more things than movies. We're competing with TikTok and with YouTube and just social media in general. Like the high you might get from seeing a great scene in a movie or being told a great story, you'll get like a 50% as strong of that, but like every second when you're talking to your friends from around the world constantly and engaging with these other kinds of give and takes. So that is retarding our attention span too. So it's all part of that same miasma that has led us to this point.
Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of the beginning of the blockbuster film. Let's
Sure.
talk about these auteurs, these great filmmakers who most of them don't really make too much anymore. Um, where do you put the beginning of the blockbuster? Do you put it with Jaws or do you put it with 2001? I mean, you can say 1948. I think the term is used in 1948. They started uttering blockbuster. There's
Yeah,
also
is that you probably know better than me the etymology of that actual word, but to me it starts with Jaws because
okay.
that was again Spielberg, one of the original kind of call them what you will, film brats, film school babies. These were the first generation of American filmmakers who grew up loving movies and going to film schools. That when like Peter Bogdanovich would want to go sit at the foot of John Ford or Orson Welles and say like, teach me what you do. They're like, get away from me, kid. This is just my job. Like they didn't have this pretension of themselves as artists, which like say what you want about it. It was genuine. And I still think John Ford, he made popular movies that were compared to what's today. They look like masterpieces of artistic sensitivity. I mean, it is a stark contrast to what those guys grew up watching in the popular cinema and taking seriously. And then they went on to make their sort of, versions of it. And, it was different because at the time, the story goes, Hollywood was, just catching up to the baby boom generation, trying to market to them. And they didn't know how to market this huge untapped well of money, basically, teenagers and, wanting to go see movies that reflected their experience somewhat.
American Graffiti.
And right, so you get American Graffiti, you get Easy Rider, you get I guess Coppola's first one was The Conversation. We get also like Vietnam era things start to be kind of affected, even when you get westerns and things like that, like even Sam Peckinpah's Wild Bunch. You start to get this different sort of even though he's from an earlier generation, you get this sort of aesthetic coming in. And when Easy Rider made such a splash, and you can keep going. Besides Coppola, and you got Scorsese, you got Lucas, you got Bogdanovich, all these guys showed like, wow, if we give these 20-year-old kids the keys to the kingdom, we're going to be raking in the big bucks. And for a while, it was a golden age. Even some of the older filmmakers benefited from it. If you think of things like I said, Wild Bunch, or John Cassavetes got to actually make movies. They were independent, but he had them distributed by Columbia for a while. So it was sort of a trickle-down effect. Also, like Sidney Lumet made his best movies, I think, was in this time, even though he had been making movies for 10 or 15 years. So this generation sort of was given the keys, and Jaws came out of that. And look, I don't think Jaws is a great work of art. It is an amazing movie. It is just so gripping and thrilling, and from end to end, like you can't take your eyes off of it. And he was basically doing his version of like what a Hitchcock movie had been shown to be able to successfully do. And long story short, you go from Jaws to Star Wars, which was basically George Lucas's ode to all the Kira Kurosawa movies that he loved growing up. And from there, it's like, oh, well, we don't even have to try to make movies for adults anymore. If we just aim for this sort of, and really Jaws is somewhat more of an adult movie than even Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
And
Close Encounters comes out.
Yeah, and Close Encounters was also, he had said he tried to put his tribute to John Cassavetes and Woman Under the Influence in that, in some of the scenes there. So these guys are sampling, if you will, or being sort of photocopies in a way with their own, clever spins to it. I don't want to take away the master of craft that Spielberg is, but they were influenced by their love of movies, and they knew more about movies than about life. And it starts to become this diminishing returns until we get to, further and further on. Now we're just doing, who even knows who the filmmakers are? I mean, obviously hats off to the Russo brothers if they made, these Avengers movies, but they're not the key to the understanding of them is the text, is the making a comic book into real life, not, the vision of these people wanting to tell some great story. It was, the Stan Lee story from 60 years ago. So it did basically for me, and again, this is not my area of expertise, but my kind of take is that they basically realized that they could stop even trying to make movies for adults. Like they just want to go for that teenage mentality, either physically teenage or mentally teenage. And let's be honest, when I go see the Avengers, I become 12 again. I'm not being asked to reach my highest level of intelligence or maturity to enjoy that movie. And I don't, and I do. I mean, enjoy it. But now it's just marketing for that easy disposable income. And even the Oscar movies, which was for a while holding out the pretension for like, we got to make a few like prestige movies, right? Even Spielberg's Schindler's List, which I don't think is a great movie by any means. At least he was trying to do something adult or mature, even if he had to turn it into Indiana Schindler versus the Gestapo of Doom to do it. But it was at least he was aiming for something. And it's become just pointless now when Lord of the Rings gets Oscars and they're nominating Wakanda Forever for what's it called for Oscars, so we've let go of even the pretension to something meaningful or artistic or difficult, right? God forbid we ask the audience to not just completely enjoy and consume with no hesitation what we put out there, right? No work is involved, no growth is necessary. It was just pure product. And look, and there's always been that's it's not like you can look back and look at all the crappy movies that we've all forgotten about throughout Hollywood, but now it's like it's just the answer to your question you asked me before, maybe it was before we went on, is it new? No, but it is just an extreme degree. It's not a difference in kind anymore, but it's just the degree has just been raised to the hilt.
Well, we have a super chat here that is addressed to you.
Do I get some of that money?
No, Matt.
Okay,
you don't get
right.
any of the $3.25 that we may get from this.
Yeah. All right. I'll answer anyway, though.
That would be a bitch if he was like, well, I'm not answering this shit.
Let's negotiate. How about $1?
If Matt was like, I'm sorry, I don't do that shit. Treat me like a black.
Hey, I'm on strike here
in the 90s. I do not sing anything for free.
Yeah,
we just need a Matt, do you think
no paying Whitey here? I saw that. Yeah. Amen.
Matt, do you think the Oscars abandoned even trying to award prestige films? Thank you very much, JB.
Well, it says when. When do I think that?
Oh,
well, I don't really pay too close attention to the Oscars anymore. I have on Letterboxd, and people want to come find me on Letterboxd. I talk movies all the time there and make lists and play around with the obsessive compulsive side of being a film fan. There's a list of like all the Oscar winners for all time, and I think I've seen 60% or something. So it's not like a huge area that I concentrate on, but I think I remember something, always knowing that the Oscars were always a marketing campaign for just like, look how important we can be, a pretension to seriousness. But when Lord of the Rings, I think it won, right? Didn't it win an Oscar?
I don't know.
When the CGI laden Hobbit cartoon action movie won an Oscar, I think that could be a demarcation line. I'm sure someone could point out something worse earlier, maybe.
Lord of the Rings for me was a moment where I was like, I don't want to go to a movie theater anymore, because I remember my friends took me to see a midnight showing of whatever the last one in the series was, and people were complaining. That was it, The Hobbit, whatever the last one in the first three they made.
Oh yeah,
so this is like the early 2000s.
Yeah, I fell asleep in the last two at least once.
I definitely nodded off, but I just kept hearing people that had literal Hobbit feet on, fucking just whining about how it wasn't true to the real story. And I was just like, dude, I'm not gonna judge anybody for getting off and wearing Hobbit feet. I probably could get away without putting anything on, actually. But it's just, I would like there to be an option, right? Like that's my thing. Like I'm not saying down with all cartoon movies and superhero movies. I love superheroes and so on and so forth for what they are. But if it's a steady diet of nothing but that, then I think it's a bad thing for everything, for art, for culture, for politics, everything. Well, that brings up kind of my next question. And, we talked about this. We had a film, I don't know if you would call him a film scholar. He definitely was a scholar on Russian history. And he studied, kind of the Soviet Union. And he wrote a whole book about horror films in the Soviet Union. Cool. And in reading his book, and his reviews in these movies and what they meant, blah 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 blah. I juxtaposed it to the capitalist production that we got in the 1980s with the explosion of home video. You know, the explosion of people that like Charles Band, someone I'm trying to get on my show, Lloyd Kaufman. I'll not get back to him.
I know him. Who was the first guy you mentioned?
Charles Band.
Don't know him.
Charles Band, the Puppet Master movies.
Okay, I recall.
Terror Vision.
I mean, I can picture them on the shelf at the video store.
Right, Charles Band is behind a lot of those movies that you can picture on the shelf.
Okay, I certainly know Lloyd Kaufman. I met him once even, and I tried to hit him up for a job when I first moved to New York.
I've been trying to get Lloyd Kaufman on the show because I definitely want to get his take on this, because I've heard him in different interviews, and read different interviews with him talking about the expansion of home video and how it enabled those guys to have their own production companies, and then, you know, give life to a lot of filmmakers that wouldn't have had life before. There is something to be said about capitalist production and being able to get some gems out of all the BS, especially in the 80s. You know, I found a movie the other night I had never heard of before with Roy Scheider called Night Game. You ever seen it? From like 88?
The title rings a bell. I don't think I've
thriller
seen it.
Movie about baseball, and Roy Scheider's trying to catch a killer, and it was a fun thriller movie that I had never heard of. And I was like, oh, this is so good. And that's kind of what you used to get with some of that stuff.
That's the good thing about the world we live in. They're all, you know, time is a flat circle here, where they're all still there. We can see all of those still today.
Yeah. No, we can. But when they came out, like you talked about, I remember that cover at the video store. That's a whole different feeling than going, I remember that when I was flipping through on input streaming service here. Yeah. It doesn't hit the same way.
Yeah. But I remember walking around a movie rental store, like a video store, endlessly with a list of the tiny little paper that I put in my wallet, not knowing, like, should I get this or should I get that? The same way I'm flipping through endless Netflix. It's only there they would eventually say, we're closing, you have to leave. So like you have to do something or get out. Now it's just you could endlessly flip for hours and hours and hours. I mean, I'm not going to diss this perfect storm of just availability of everything, especially when I used to, you know, come on spring break and stay at my grandparents' house and go to Kim's Video and hook 2 VCRs together and copy as many as I could that were only available there to take back with me to school. You know, like, I remember being desperate to find things that I thought were interesting or not available. And now it's like, here's the 4K Blu-ray that just came out of it. Like, that's a wonderful thing, the development for our, hyper-saturated media environment. So I'm not upset about that in any way. What I will say, though, is that for every, there was Charles Band and Lloyd Kaufman, but these guys were also making just their low budget version of commercial movies. They weren't really.
Oh, they were all biting. Yeah,
pushing
Roger
boundaries.
Corman.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Roger Corman. But again, in his biting, there's some decent movies that Corman makes trying to bite, like Alien.
Oh yeah, and, no doubt. I mean. So it's like, I guess it's the old question of like art versus entertainment, right? It's like, it's never been a good time to make art in the American scene, right? It's always been seen as highfalutin or pretentious or whatever. And a lot of people who set out to make entertainment, I think, accomplish something more serious and artistic. But, like I said, there used to be this niche that, home video led to it too. You guys like Jim Jarmusch and some of these indie guys, they could not have existed without foreign video sales and all these other things that
me.
No, you froze for a second. You still
I froze? Then I apologize. I didn't know who froze.
That's okay. I wasn't looking at you anyway.
Don't look at the chat.
No, I wasn't. But there is some gems. We're losing a niche for something different, for something original to come out. That's what I lament. Yeah, that's my bag.
But can these cats? I feel like these cats can't get on the same way they could have gotten on with, oh, this video hit or this hit during cable, so maybe this cat deserves a chance at a serious film. We had a young filmmaker on.
I don't know. I let me just address that real quick, because I think like Greta Gerwig sort of proves that wrong. You know, she started out making movies with Joe Swanberg on video cameras, and one thing led to another, and now she's made the biggest movie of the whole year and of almost all time. You know, so it's
She made Barbie.
Barbie. Yes.
Did she start in this streaming era?
She started in 2008 or 9, so not really.
I think I'm looking at it from this current moment. Like before this moment is different.
I don't know. We'll have to see. I guess the jury is still out on who comes up from that world, if it's possible.
We're so controlled by the ability to watch what we want to watch. We're controlled by the idea of us having control, and we think that the mighty algorithm is giving us these new options. In reality, they're just kind of, they keep giving us whatever we put into it, which becomes the same thing over and over. So how do you discover, new movies? I liked, as a young person, silly stuff, but if I wanted to watch,
really, you seem like such a serious
I am,
man.
Is it the shirt?
Sure.
But as a young person, I discovered horror movies, because if I wanted to watch Revenge of the Nerds 15 or Ski School 9, on Cinemax at 11, I would have to watch all these other movies before that came on. And I discovered so many other horrible filmmakers in trying to watch this horrible movie. So, like my love for Andy Sedaris movies, Malibu Bay Productions, ninjas and explosions and scantily clad women. Again, my love for horror. And then they would have all these kind of straight to cable or straight to video thrillers that I was never going to see at the theater. I got to find all this.
Did you have like your weird neighborhood friends, like the older kids who were like, have you ever heard of John Waters? Like, that's what happened to me.
No, dude, that was like, my mom was like that. My mom was, I won't say too much about her. She was an interesting woman. And when I was 11, she came in my room and she goes, "You have to watch this." I recorded it because I thought I was having an acid trip. I think it's called Street Trash. And
oh wow.
And she recorded it for me and handed it to me. My mom was an interesting woman.
That sounds like it.
That gave me a lot of freedom to, she may look back on it now and shake her head like I was in a drug-fueled haze. But yeah, she definitely.
Some of my best movies were recommended by people who are in drug-fueled hazes. So I had an uncle who sat me down when I was like 13 and I started playing with my video camera and saying like, I'm gonna make movies, and I had no idea what I was talking about. He's like, "Here, go watch this." It was Harold and Maude. I was doing stuff with like chopping off hands and blood and stuff, so he's just like, "Here, see what you can do with that." And then he showed me Taxi Driver, and kind of gave me like the film school primer. And so I owed to that. Now today, like, I don't get the algorithm feeding me stuff. Again, I'm an outlier, maybe. They call me Matthew Flim Guy, so I have to live up to that and do something different, I guess. But with Letterboxd, I literally have 3,000 movies that have been recommended to me by all the other great cinephile, film-loving guys and gals out there who say, like, this is my favorite movie. Whenever someone says it's my favorite movie, I put it on a list. So I don't necessarily have an algorithm feeding me movies. Maybe you just have to make more of a little bit more of an effort. And believe me, it gets overwhelming, because I don't know if I'll see 3,000 more movies before I croak. But, you have a way of curating it yourself in a way that you never could before. So I don't think you have to be a slave to the algorithm. Maybe it just takes a little more effort. But it always did. It always did. And also, by the way, there was an algorithm before. It was called the studio executives and the advertising executives. They thought of what you needed to be fed back. Now they just have perfected it with the use of technology. So again, it's not different. It's just been purified in a way, right? It's not a completely new thing. they've always wanted to figure out ways to just feed you the same formula of what worked before, and here it is again. And anything original was just like a fluke. Like I remember when I saw The Matrix, and The Matrix, if you look at it, is so many influences in a blender.
Johnny Mnemonic. I didn't realize they bit so much from Johnny Mnemonic.
And I almost didn't go see The Matrix because of Johnny Mnemonic. I'm just like another like cyber Keanu Reeves. No, thank you. But long story short, that is almost a fluke because it has its foot in pastiche and what had already seemed to be proven to work, and they took it to this other level.
Yeah,
I saw The Crow. That was a little bit better. But yeah,
I mean, The Crow, for me, The Crow, if we want to talk about like dark comic movies, there's probably some super nerd that would say Dolph Lundgren's The Punisher in '89 is where it starts. And you punch that guy in the face and say, this is why no one likes you and you're never going to prom.
Why didn't he wear the skull? That's all I need to know. Why didn't he wear the skull?
You know what's funny? I was so waiting for that when I watched that.
Yeah.
But seriously, The Crow kind of sets the groundwork for what you're going to get in Blade, which to me really becomes the template, and then The Matrix just follows suit.
Yeah, and all the John Woo movies that were a fad for a while, or the Kung Fu movies before that, Asian cinema, and they were a reference to American action movies and French crime movies. So there's always been this, repurposing and sort of for what makes it to the commercial cinema. It always had to have some kind of sure thing connected to it. It wasn't an algorithm pumping it to you. Darkman, I actually was one of the few friends of mine
you knew it was going to be
Conan.
Look, you knew it was going to be Conan because he was the only person that was fired up when he was like 12 years old to watch shitty ass Darkman.
No, I was. I literally drew the
you and Conan
Darkman on my 9th grade spiral notebook. Like I remember drawing the whole thing off of because that was also great marketing. Talk about marketing. My friends that worked at the movie theater, this was before I worked there, had those buttons. I still have one somewhere. Who is Darkman? It was like, ooh.
Mm-hmm.
So, marketing, it's all marketing. It was a letdown compared to the marketing, but I like that one.
I did not. You know what I did like? Dark City.
Yeah, you know what? I just saw that, and I have to say, did not vibe with it.
I just dug the way it looked.
Great art direction.
Yes, love that.
But I think the point is that capitalism and film production have gone hand in hand since the very beginning, and it's only become easier to feed back what is guaranteed to pull $10 or $15 out of somebody's pocket as time has gone on, which has meant that they've had to take less risks, which means you get less originality and less anything valuable. It's just a remix of a remix of a remix of a remix of a remix. That's kind of why Barbie. Yeah, the one thing it has going for it is that it's based on one of the most popular toys of all time. So as long as it's just not saying "fuck Barbie," they let her do whatever she wants, right? So
I mean, we all remember that song, the Barbie girl song.
Yeah,
well, of us that literally remember when you couldn't escape it.
Yeah, they must use that in the movie, right?
I'm sure they do. I saw that and I was like, why do people care? But anyway, let's move on.
It's just making the point that, this is why I get such queasy feelings over that. I've heard enough people who I respect say that they enjoyed it and it had good ideas and so on and so forth. But again, at the end of the day, it was not going to come out if it didn't support the values of Mattel, the Barbie making company.
Okay, this is my next question, and it
Matt says they would not.
It goes into what you just said. And this question is from Mean Jean Bajlan.
The kids went to bed. Okay, cool.
Well, he had some questions he wanted to ask you beforehand. How is the rise of intellectual property movies affecting the film industry in the United States, and not just Barbie and Marvel? Let's remember Hasbro, as my good friend Dan Larson says, until all are one. Hasbro owns everything I touched as a child, right? And they've definitely failed. G.I. Joes didn't do that well. This last Transformers, I don't think did that well. The Gem movie was a huge flop.
Truly outrageous.
Truly outrageous that movie was that horrible.
I didn't even know that happened, but okay.
Yeah.
I missed that one.
Good. Keep missing it.
I was not a gem.
These aren't the these aren't the fake rock stars you're looking for.
Well, it was the Misfits, but not with Glenn Danzig. That's the problem.
We're gonna get her.
I think I probably did watch that cartoon after school, if nothing else was on.
Do you remember? I'm okay here before you answer this question. If you remember this, you are my good friend.
We just share the same brainwashing, but okay, go on.
Definitely. Jem and the Holograms starts off from a block of cartoons that consisted of Jem and the Holograms and the Bigfoot cartoon. Do you remember that?
Bigfoot.
And it was a block of cartoons, and they were like 15 minutes each.
Was it Harry and the Hendersons cartoon from the movie? I don't remember a Bigfoot cartoon.
Too? No, like Bigfoot, the monster truck Bigfoot.
Oh, right. Yes. No, I had one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. But see, that's the thing is, and I talked about this with Sam. People can go back and look at how we had the same basic conversation. But I was just saying, like, I was programmed by those toys to go see G.I. Joe and Transformers. Now, I only saw one of the Transformers movies. That was enough for me to say, like, okay, this is.
I get it.
Even my programming is not going to make me want to enjoy anything like this. You know,
dig it. I didn't dig it.
Yeah. Same for Marvel. Same for all the toys that I played with, and so on. I went to see I saw the 2 G.I. Joe movies. They were not great, but they weren't as like violently bad as the Transformers, I think. But regardless, once I'm in the theater, it almost doesn't matter, right? Like, at least with Barbie, I guess she put some intelligence into it, and they wanted it to be this more of a political statement, which I find only great. And the more right wingers lose their mind over it, the happier I am that it exists, and so on. But most movies for years have just been their marketing. Like, if you can make a cool trailer and get people there, it's almost 90% of it. Like, because bad word of mouth, good word of mouth, if the marketing is good, it will make its money back, right? Word of mouth almost doesn't, I don't think, even enter in anymore. So if you liked G.I. Joe, you would go see G.I. Joe. I guess it was the difference between making its money back and becoming a smash hit, but that didn't stop them from just saying, well, what's the next toy we can make something out of, right? So it's just pulling on the programming that we've been given to get us into the theater. The fact that Barbie was able to be made into, from all reports, into something interesting is almost beside the point. You know what I'm saying? Like, as long as it didn't exactly transgress the toy itself, it could have been almost anything and still suited its commercial purposes. So it's not it's not a sequel, and it's something original. But yeah, IP is just like a built-in guarantee that a certain population who have been brainwashed will go see it. Just because it gives you that good hit of dopamine, like, oh, remember that? Oh, and now they're real on the screen. And that's just commercialism. That's not art. That's not even entertainment, really. It's just like that's why even the Star Treks, right? I'm a huge Star Trek guy. Even the remakes of the Star Trek movies, the J.J. Abrams Star Treks, were all just like blatant references to the original, but with none of the actual DNA of what made them interesting. It was just like, remember how this guy used to say this thing? Here it is. And you just go, yeah, that was great. Because it's just there to push that little button of nostalgia for you.
Well, what do you think about someone like Todd Phillips that says, and this interview made me watch Joker, when he says the only way, I think he said he was at a premiere of something that he knew was going to flop. He never said what movie it was. He was like, this wasn't going to do well. And he said he looked up, and we don't know how true this is. Great story, though. He says he looks up and he sees a big billboard for a superhero movie. And he's like, the only way I can tell the story I want to tell about neoliberalism is if I couch it in a superhero story. So he makes Joker. He starts writing Joker. And of course, he had to like work it out for years with DC, who is a big part of Warner, because they didn't want to, mess with the integrity of the character and blah, 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 blah. But Joker goes on it, definitely won awards. But the only way we can get a movie that, kind of makes us challenge the system in which we live in, and, that's a whole different conversation, these films.
Yeah. But is it really challenging?
No, I don't think any of them do. I don't think.
Or is it, this is the eternal debate. This is even, this goes back to, movies like Schindler's List or like, serious issue movies about real history or so on, is it really giving you like just a spoonful of sugar to make the medicine go down, so to speak? Or is it just so overwhelming and adulterating the medicine that it's just all so much sugar that you actually don't get any of the quote unquote medicine or knowledge or insight or new way of thinking? You're just given the impression that you have, which is worse than if you didn't even think you had it in the first place. Because now you're done. You're like, yeah, I get neoliberalism. That's bad. Oh, you want to go to Applebee's? What are we doing?
That's kind of how I agree with Zizek, where all these movies end with Tina. There is no alternative. If you look at a movie like Snowpiercer, which actually does it kind of end on an up note, they make a whole series out of that, which just beats you over the head with, this is how class works.
Right.
This is how capitalism works.
Yeah.
And then Parasite kind of is the same way. There's a new show that premiered this year on Netflix called Beef, which I don't know if it's going to have multiple seasons, but it's an episodic thing that kind of, delves into class issues within the model minority myth of Asian people. Great show. I really enjoyed it, but they all kind of end with there is no alternative. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, to be honest with you, because sometimes you can get conversations started. I'm sure organizers can use these movies as a way to kind of get to people that aren't going to sit down and read the denseness that is the Communist Manifesto. Like, I get that.
Yeah. No, I remember in history class when they would show us the movie instead of the guy lecturing, I'd be glad. But you have to ask, at what point is it so abstracted that it's almost worse than not knowing what it is at all? And there's a continuum. I'm not saying like every movie is a complete bastardization of the story they're trying to tell. But see, this is another thing for me. And my sort of, I teach this online film appreciation class, which people want to join me, and we talk about movies every week on Zoom for 2 hours on Tuesday. You get a link, and I'm always showing these movies that really are difficult, that take a lot of attention, or are disturbing in some way, or use the medium in some just out of the box kind of way. Some great filmmakers from around the world and through time. And I'm always looking for movies that are not necessarily interested in ideology. Even though we show plenty of movies that have politics and history as their subject, or their sort of where they're set, let's say. But I've never thought that a movie is really the appropriate place to try to change a mind on an ideological level, right? Like art is higher and lower, right? It's not as it's not as mundane, I guess, as that, which is not a bad thing, but it's, plenty of really seriously directly political movies to me work as art because they actually make you have to think about the world on a perceptual level differently, not just like abstract. That's the realm of philosophy and essays and books and real history and real sociology. Art, to me, it's denuded when it tries to be like that. It's like, or it's bad on both accounts. It's bad history and bad sociology and bad art, right? So there's plenty of movies that do have a political point. Somebody here wrote Come and See, the war movie. That's an incredible movie, and it does give you some insight into the sort of facts of the Belarusian sort of resistance and the war that goes on there. But it works as art because you're subjectively given this experience on an experiential level. It's not an intellectual message necessarily that is in the important part of it. And this is not necessarily a popular or widespread opinion, but to me, I try to focus on the medium as a conveyance of these more quotidian, mundane, but also more maybe spiritual, if you want to call it that, if you like that word or not. These other ways of completely rearranging your consciousness, not just giving you new facts, data, figures, arguments on that logical level. It has its place, and I love documentaries and stuff too, but sometimes I do come away feeling like, well, I want to actually know what really happened. Like, that gave me enough interest to want to pursue it. But, especially when it's a dramatization, they always have to shave some edges and change this and change that. So I never really liked that, to feel like I know what it's like now because I watched this like story about it. So to me, it's a whole different thing. So when you say like, oh, I had to use the Joker to be, talk about neoliberalism, it's a good intention, but I don't know if I buy that that's practical or even possible, really.
Or was it like a different, like, you know, he tells a story kind of like, I had to use the Joker, or was it like, if I use the Joker, I'll get money, see?
Yeah, the Joker. I mean, I guess. I mean, honestly, one of my good friends edited that movie, so I can't really say anything too negative about it because I'm really happy for him. And we had the same media production class in high school. So and they're working on 2 right now as we speak, I think.
I saw that.
But you know, it was obviously a pastiche of like Taxi Driver and, you know,
and the comedian, right?
And King of Comedy.
King of Comedy, yes.
Yeah, so it had these Scorsese touches, which is, again, here we started off the conversation with these filmmakers that were copies of copies of copies. Now we have a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy thrown in a comic book character. So it's, you know, I guess I can't fault him for having that kind of ambition, but I just think it's a misuse of the medium in some way.
Well, speaking of the medium, this is another question from me, Jean Bajlan. What does the rise of home streaming mean for movie making? And I will expand on this by asking it this way. Much like with music production, it is very easy to make a record in your home. I no longer have a drum set or real amplifiers anymore. Everything I do is digital.
You've replaced drummers with AI?
No, I still play them myself with keys, but I don't have my drum set. Or I used to use the drummer's drum set, but I don't have a drum set. I lived in a warehouse where everything was wired for sound, and if I wanted to record something, I could whenever I wanted to. I live in a normal place right now, and I don't want to, you know, bother people when I want to ride the lightning at 4 a.m. because I got an idea. Yeah, that's the last thing you want to hear at 4 a.m. You know, Conan will tell you the amp setup was, you know, there's 3 amps going at once. You know, you don't want to hear that drony tone and me, fuck it, fuck, you know.
But you're saying you've got the full studio in your apartment now.
I have the full studio, and how many films have been shot on iPhones?
Yeah, a lot.
There's an ease to a certain degree of filmmaking. There's, you know, high-end digital editing equipment that people can get. It's not the same as it used to be, and now you have outlets that crave content. So how does that change the way we make films?
I mean, this is the thing, is you would think I was prepared for it to be a revolution when digital video DV came out in the late 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in sort of it was in a way, but it took the sort of, you know, P.T. Barnum-esque kind of genius of Lars von Trier and those Dogma guys to kind of really get it, you know, into the mainstream or into the news cycle, if you will. And then they dropped it. To me, I don't think it necessarily there. I'll tell you this: there's a glut of Brooklyn filmmakers who've made their shaky cam, John Cassavetes ripoff kind of movies that, you know, and some of them are great. I was a huge fan of the mumblecore movement. The top 10 or 15 of those I thought were wonderful. A chance to be risque and kind of, you know, revelatory of dark personal truths in a way that a commercial cinema would.
You said mumblecore?
Oh yeah, mumblecore. Have you never?
Is it like mumble rap? Is it like
No, it was just a mumblecore was a kind of joke name given to this rash of, you know, HDV movies that came out in the sort of mid 2000s because they all like mumbled when they spoke and the sound was not always great. But you know, it started with this guy Andrew Bujalski's first movie, Funny Haha, which was fantastic, and that was actually shot on 16 millimeter while he was still in school. But anyway, my point is, it resulted in a ton of stuff being made, but it was all competing for the same related, you know, relative eyeballs, right? So it's not a pure good, but it's, to me, it's the same as if you know, everyone has a pen and a paper. Not everybody's a poet or a writer, right? So it's do I think, you know? Well, the question is home streaming, right? Like the fact that there are more outlets is only good, but it's still you still gotta like have it on there to to be seen, and there's only so many hours in the day. Now there's this guy Kentucker Audley, who was one of the original Mumblecore guys. He made a movie called Team Picture, and he runs a website that you can sign up for called nobudge.com. And it's what it says: people who made their no budget movies put them on his site, and you pay like $2 or $3 or whatever to watch them there. So it's a very DIY outlet for this huge amount of movies. And some of them are amazing. Some of them are great. But have I seen even 5% of them? No. There's just so many. So it's just a matter of being in the same competition with everything we talked about before. TikTok, internet, TV, sports, Minecraft, I don't know, whatever,
You made a good point when you said those people were making those movies kind of competing for the same 100 eyeballs.
Yeah.
And there's kind of this idea that if so-and-so got some notoriety and some press, then so-and-so is making money. So if we want to get notoriety or press, then we have to take so-and-so's audience by doing the same thing, except a little different and maybe better. But you're not really trying to break new ground. I'm so old. I came up in an era of if you sounded like someone else musically, people would crap on you. You'd be a biter, and no one would dig you.
You still remember when selling out was a thing?
Yeah, selling out, is kind of, well, that's hot, so let's just do that. And in the world in which we're doing this show in right now, there's a ton of people that I would call sellouts. They just, oh, this is hot, shitting on that person. Like there's an entire industry on Anna Kasparian. Like you can you want to up your Twitter followers, just call her a name or not call her a name, and people will give a shit. I think that's weird and kind of funny and sad. I think art is the same way. When I say art, I mean music and film. If you think so and so in your little indie circle is blowing up and you bite that person, everything that's going to come after that is going to be kind of trash to me, because you're not trying to be creative. You're just trying to be famous.
Yeah. But see, that's why I brought up the whole idea of selling out. It's like, now it's like, of course you want to be famous. Like what question is there that's the goal? And don't get me wrong, everybody who makes a film wants it to be famous and for them to have a career and be notable and so on. But if that's the only thing you're interested in, then you kill a hooker or whatever, right? You
have to kill a hooker in 2023.
It's a direct line to being famous. If that's I didn't make that up. That's an old phrase, right? But it's and this goes back to why I think it's tilting at windmills a little bit, but I think it's about education. You have to like break through this noise of everything else that's so, again, technologically designed to keep your attention, right? I argue on Facebook about movies more than watch them. I know there's a problem, right? It's like, because I'm getting this dopamine and this other kind of brain chemistry thing of like, somebody's wrong and I've got to, oh my God, you've got to like break away. It's like you said, put the phone on the other side of the room. So we need to counterbalance that with, again, I don't have the secret formula, but for me, it's forcing myself to watch these 3-hour movies that, are difficult, require a lot of attention, a lot of time, a lot of nuance, attention to detail, keeping that muscle in my brain at least somewhat limber, because unless we make an audience for these things, there's no point. It's like pearls before swine, if you will.
Well, speaking of swine pearls, I want to know what movies you recommend. I have a thing here on This Is Revolution called Movie Night.
I heard, and I want to come check out Fear of a Black Hat. I've never seen that, and I've always wanted to.
Well, Matthew, you need more black friends. You should have saw it in '94.
Well, okay, yeah, I know. I was just watching CB4 over and over.
That doesn't make it right.
No. Bebe's Kids. I'm trying to think of all the movies.
Jesus Christ! If you know any of the Robin Harris bit that Bebe's Kids is from, then you get a pass. But if you do
Yeah.
not know any of the,
Well, it was part of the trailer. It was part of the trailer. That was at the theater when I was an usher there. So
Robin Harris, I thought he was one of the funniest fucking people ever because he was just so ridiculous with some of that Bebe's Kids joke where the movie comes from. It's too close to home.
Well, I will have to check out Fear of a Black Hat.
Fear of a Black Hat.
It's been on my list since then.
If you like Christopher Guest movies, this is Rusty Cundiff, who I think is shown to be a very capable filmmaker. He makes the first Tales from the Hood. I don't know how you feel about that movie as anthologies go. It's a pretty good.
I'm not like a big horror guy to begin with, but I appreciate what it did. I saw it.
Well, watching him do a full-on comedy about how he felt hip-hop was in the 90s, and being that hip-hop hasn't really changed much, as Toussaint said to me the other day in a private conversation, hip-hop just isn't allowed to mature. And I was like, I guess so, because watching Fear of a Black Hat, and Jesus, nothing has changed. But we watch, sometimes we get to watch some fun, more, I don't know if art films is the right way to put it, but, more politically centered movies, and definitely of late some fun ones like Ninja 3: The Domination, which should be on everybody's best of list. Matthew, it mixes Poltergeist, The Exorcist, Flashdance, and a ninja movie all in one film.
Awesome. How can you go wrong with that?
Starring Lucinda Dickey. You can't go wrong. Sho Kosugi.
Oh, well, say no more. I'll
Right?
say anything with him.
But what are your picks?
My picks. Do you want me to lay on some like heavyweight art movies or something that more like what you've been talking about?
Both. Just give us the heavyweight art movies.
Okay. Well, if anybody who is within the sound of my voice does actually want to dive into these heavyweight art movies from all.
Can you send me a link and I'll put it in the chat right now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's hang on, it's on my Twitter bio, so I can find it there. And in fact, we've got at least one of my students here, Matt, the letter hack is here.
Oh shit! Shout out to the letter hack.
So he can attest to what goes on there. We recently watched In the Realm of the Senses. Do you know this movie?
I watched In the Realm of the Senses on tour in Fargo, North Dakota.
By yourself?
Nope. I used to be in a group with my now ex, and we were in a house of the person that came to the show. This was one of those things. It's like, hey, you guys can crash at my house, and we're at this. And
he's just like, what kind of mood are you guys in? Let me put this on.
we had been in this person's house before, and we were friends with them and their roommate, and she was like, let's watch In the Realm of the Senses. I was like, I never heard that. They're like, dude, it's so good. And my ex was like, oh, it's so good. And we put it on, and I swear to God, the whole time I was like this.
Yeah. Well, we should tell people its claim to fame is that he used, he portrayed unsimulated sexual intercourse. It's about a couple who just get lost in their bodies and become obsessed with each other, having sex all the time, and all the world falls away. And so, yes, that is its big headline, is unsimulated sex. But it's also a very, I think, intense movie about obsession.
Yes.
And about escape from, it was a very political movie at the time. It was set between the world wars. And it was based on a true story. Somebody here reminds me.
They really.
Well, I don't want to say what it is in case it might ruin the ending.
Look, if you haven't seen that movie, it came out in like 75. If you haven't seen it now, F you, right? So you can get all the spoilers in the world. I'm not saving anything for you. The movie's older than me.
Yeah. It's
Jesus
barely
Christ.
as old as me. But yeah.
Dude, that movie made me run to find out. I'm everything to find out the real story, which I don't know. I think the real story is a little crazier than the movie, but still, you're like, I watched that movie just in awe. But, I think we've all been in a relationship like that at some point, where the first bit of it. Another movie I watched recently that kind of, I won't say reminds me of that, but like a little bit of that.
What?
The Rachel Papers.
Oh, I never saw that one. Is that also about
Again, I just discovered it the other day.
I've heard the title.
It's this 80s British rom-com about this dude, but pre-internet, right?
Uh-huh.
About this dude that creates this computer program on how to pick up women, and the woman he's trying to pick up is Ione Skye.
Oh, say no
Like
more.
like 19-year-old Ione Skye. Like she's like super young in this movie.
Interesting.
And yeah, it was a fun film, but unlike In the Realm of the Senses, or maybe kind of similar in a less macabre way, he finally gets the girl, and she stays with him for a few weeks, and he gets tired of her. And he's like, hey, this isn't fun anymore, and you're a real person that has real person things. You're a slob. But I was thoroughly enjoyed the Rachel Papers. It's on
All
Amazon.
right, I'll add that now my 3,665 movies list of things to see. All right, so what are my main things? Like, well, okay, so you're a political show, and I just got done saying like I don't believe in movies to be political, but there are some movies that I think do address politics in the way that where the rubber meets the road. It's like why people adopt them, what effects they have on their lives. And one of my favorite ones of all time for that is by a filmmaker named Robert Kramer, and the movie is called Milestones. And it's basically, it's a longer one. It's maybe close to 3 hours, but it's sort of about the fallout, the hangover from the 60s of the idealism of these communes, and the people still kind of hanging on, trying to live the values of their turn on, tune in, drop out kind of lifestyle. And it's just so moving, and it's I want to say it's like a eulogy, but it's not really. It's very much a mix of like drama and documentary, and it's an extremely unique experience. And I think anybody who's interested in politics and movies should see all of Robert Kramer's movies. The other one that's great that I can say offhand is Ice, which is basically like a alternative history, sort of like a science fiction, but it's like armed rebellion, armed insurrection of the 60s in New York City. Like, what if the communist groups and various student organizations like actually took up arms and were then repressed by the man? And it's very like, almost like Battle of Algiers in the West Village in the 60s, basically.
Oh, interesting.
That one's also very cool. Let's see. If anybody did pay attention to the Sight and Sound poll, like I'm a big believer in Chantal Ackerman's movie Jean Dielman, which is a 3.5-hour movie about a woman doing housework, basically, but also about obsession and the way her world falls apart. But the way the story is told in a kind of ambient structuralist kind of building of little things that you start to notice, and then eventually you realize like, oh, this isn't boring. This is building and building and building. And by the time she's making a meatloaf and almost knocks over a bottle of milk, and you go like, because you're so tuned in, like you realize that your whole mind has been like altered by this. Just by
Interesting. And what's that called again?
It's the woman's name, Jean Dielman, and then her address, 23 Quai du Commerce, 1080 Brussels. And that's on Criterion and other places like that. And it's definitely one that you've got to put the phone down, turn all the lights off, do not answer the door, stay locked in, because I've been able to see it in a movie theater, and I can't imagine how much I would have missed by having the ability to just like even get up to go to the bathroom without like disturbing people. Like you've got to really, at least for the first like hour, to see the routine. You'll understand what I mean when you watch it, but it's definitely one that if you can, I don't know, double your dose of Adderall too if you have to, but like you
gotta put the phone away. If you're watching a movie, it's only fun when the phone is put away. Yeah, I don't give a damn what it is.
And look, I even cop to like I have that thing like maybe somebody wrote me, maybe I got an email. Like you have just that instinct in your brain. It's so disturbing and corrupting. Matt says John Dielman's on HBO Max. Great. It's because it won this prestigious film poll, and it became very controversial because it was a female director and it hadn't been on the list before, and it beat Citizen Kane and Vertigo and all these classics that always get the top spot. Wow. So there was some woke, accusations of it being woke. But anyway, it's an amazing movie, and highly recommended.
Have you ever seen the movie Possession from 1981?
Yeah, it's right there.
Oh, so you're a fan of it?
Yep.
I haven't seen it yet. It's on my list. I'm scared. I'm scared to watch
You
it.
can do that voice. Not me. It is. You should be scared. You should be scared. Like Yoda said, you should be, because it is a wow. That is a disturbing fucking movie. I don't even completely understand it, but it's like it's basically about divorce, I guess,
Yeah,
but like
yeah.
through this insane, like Lovecraftian just
Yeah.
hole. So yeah, definitely a one of a kind movie. Highly recommended.
Okay, so you recommend? Look, I gotta watch it, but maybe I just have to watch it alone.
Yeah, and like don't be stoned. Don't be stoned.
Oh, I don't remember. I'm boring as shit.
Yeah. No, I know, but like no altered.
I'll be stone cold sober, just like the way I do everything else.
All right, I'm gonna give one more. Just because I'm looking at my favorite movies. Okay, here, and it's not about you, but it's got your name in the title, and it's a documentary, but it's basically just an interview with this one guy in the Chelsea hotel all night, and it's sort of a give and a take between the filmmaker who's interviewing him, and it's called Portrait of Jason. And I know it came out on Blu-ray. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere, but somebody maybe can chime in and say. But it is, I think, one of the most unique movies of all time, because it is just an hour and a half of an interview with this guy who is ostensibly like a gay hustler sleeping his way around the village in the 60s. And there's all these kind of layers of like, is he doing a character? Is he trying to con them? Does he eventually really reveal himself? Do they break him down? Are they like accusing him? Like, are they interrogating him? And it's just, and he's like a theater kind of guy. He's very flamboyant, so he does like bits and tells stories, and he's very charming. But then you peel back, it's just unbelievably amazing how Shirley Clark, an original American artist from early days of like sort of art cinema, early New York independent film, sort of a contemporary of John Cassavetes, how she made this movie. It's just a mind blower, a one of a kind movie. So if anybody hasn't seen that, check that out. And if you want more of this kind of jibber jabber, come follow me on Letterboxd, or find me on Twitter, or even Blue Sky, I believe I'm on now, or whatever.
Well, for people watching the show, there are links in the chat. There will definitely be links in the comments to be a part of Matthew Weiss's film class. I do want to ask you about some more popcorn type movies.
Yeah, sure.
Less cerebral fare. What are some of your popcorn movie choices?
Well, like my all-time favorite, like
just off the top right now.
Well, I'll be honest. Whenever I see, it hasn't been like this in a while, but I used to always see the Chronicles of Riddick on TV or whatever. I just would not turn it off. I'm not a huge fan of all the other Riddick movies. Like, I like them, and I look forward to, I guess, another one's coming. But that one, I don't know. That's like a real guilty pleasure that I just love. Love that one. Modern movie. I mean, of course, going back, Total Recall, Aliens, these are ones that, before I knew who Martin Scorsese was, I loved Arnold Schwarzenegger. So, there was all of those are my like foundational movies. And, that's, so I can't.
After The Running Man, Arnold Schwarzenegger could have punched my mom. I wouldn't have cared. I'd be like,
yeah,
not being so mouthy.
I'm pretty sure the first one I ever saw was Commando. And then
you didn't see Terminator first?
No, I think I saw.
Your parents must have loved you, because I watched Terminator as a small kid. Like,
I mean, I rented that one pretty quickly after that, but I saw Commando, and actually, I had one friend who had like the movie channels before we did, so we would go over to his house and on Friday nights and just watch all the Arnolds. In fact, the first screenplay I ever wrote was a parody of Predator that I wanted to shoot in my backyard with my friends, called Return of the Beefeater. And it was basically just like a parody of Predator. So I love that movie a lot. When I was 11 or 12.
I did love the first Predator. I just didn't want to see Danny Glover because I was like, if Arnold Schwarzenegger loses all his big buff friends, there's no way I'm too old for this shit. Bomb on the toilet, turd dropping Danny Glover is going to stop the Predator. I just couldn't watch it.
I watched that one not too long ago, maybe in the last 5 years, and it is hilarious. It is hilarious because it's like in the future, right?
Yeah, and it's like, Danny Glover, you just beat up you had a hard time beating up Whoopi Goldberg in Color Purple. I can't watch you trying to deal with.
I like anything that was sci-fi in the theater. I would go see it. Like I think I had a poster for RoboCop on my wall. RoboCop is a big one. Also, Alien Nation with James Caan.
Oh, I love it. You know what? I watched the TV show,
and I did too. Absolutely. I thought Gary Graham was better than James Caan after a while. I'm like, he knows the character.
I went to the theater to see Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, no, my dad took me to see. My dad took me to see all the Star Trek. So yeah, that's just like foundational. That's like, on Wheel of Fortune now they give you the certain amount of letters. You pick 3. Star Trek is just grant you all the Star Trek, everything Star Trek. Actually, my dad took me to see the Star Trek motion picture when I was only like 3.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because I had loved Star Wars. He's like, oh, I could take the kid to this. I was scared out of my mind. I literally remember hiding behind the seats when Ilea busts through the wall and she's like, I am Beeger. I was like, no, I was afraid. So
very different movie.
Took me years to come back to understand it through the TV shows.
Very different.
All that shit. The motionless picture. That's exactly what it was. Half hour of enterprise porn.
What else?
Let's see. What else? Oh my God. Well, like all the dad movies that I went to see when I was a kid with my dad, which were all the James Bonds, all the Rambos, all the basically Rockies, all of those. I think I've talked about this with Conan. I think I'm a fan of the later Rockies, like the Rocky Balboa. I thought was great.
Did you like the Creed movies?
And I like the first 2 Creed movies. I didn't see the third one.
Dude, I cried on Creed 2.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
At the very end, when Drago and his son are training together.
Yeah, definitely. No, for real. And that's actually why I didn't really run out to see part 3, because they so traded on the mythos of what I had loved as a kid. Like, how are they going to just do something completely original? Like I'm all for Apollo Jr., but he wasn't the main thing I was there for. It was all the Rocky stories, But again, that is a masterclass in how you trade on your nostalgia. Like you fold it in. It's not just a reference to it. It's based on it, right? The story is connected to it.
Yeah.
So you
fabulous job. Yeah. Fabulous job with the first 2 Creeds in folding in.
Yeah. But you're right. You're probably right. Especially the second one with Drago and his ex-wife hates him and
the guy that killed his dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, such a damn good movie. And the training, Rocky movies. If you're a fan of Rocky movies, then you are a fan of the montage. And the 80s, the montage. I live for the montage. If there's a training montage in a movie, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
And Rocky 4 is probably the greatest training montage of all time.
Yeah, I've wanted to run up a mountain with a log on my back ever since then. I haven't done it,
Matt.
But I've wanted to.
I got good news for you. When you come visit here in Mexico, there is a very steep hill that I go down 2 to 3 times. I'm not joking. Ask Jordan. Ask Burgess.
With a giant log over your back.
Look, I haven't got to log level yet, going down there without breaking my ass because it's so steep, first of all, and then running back up. That is the mission. And I can do that. And if I run all the way up without stopping, I feel like Rocky in that movie every time.
You're talking about the love of the montage. Reminds me that, another sort of guilty pleasure who's making like slightly elevated entertainment movies along these lines that we used to like is Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and
what is his name? The British guy, Simon Pegg.
No, well, he's the actor, but the
Oh, I thought he was the
director.
director too.
No, it's all right here for me on the internet. Edgar Wright. Thank you. Sorry, Edgar. But Edgar Wright, yeah. He calls them tooling up, which is, I guess, the British way of calling it that. But they always do that, like, he's like the master of that. He's got to work those in. And Hot Fuzz is probably the quintessential one where he pays homage to the tooling up montage. But he's a guy that's like, he's our age, and he's, got the keys to the kingdom. So he's making, again, copies of copies of copies, but he's doing it with a kind of flair for it. It's Tarantino-esque, but a little less insane and amoral than Tarantino, really.
Well, back to talking about copies in the 80s, where you get the first montage of like the action guys getting their weapons together. Every movie has to have the, montage of
That's right.
Getting all the stuff together and getting ready to take over the bad guy. And we're going to A-team our car to the fucking make a battle wagon to go into the thing.
I just saw a movie that I've been wanting to see for years. It was playing at the Metrograph here in Manhattan called Alphabet City, which the movie starts. It's basically about a low-level drug dealer trying to like get out of the game in the most bombed out, heroin-ridden East Village of 1983. And it starts with him putting on his and this is at the time, it was made at the time. So it's not Edgar Wright reference. It's like it's what it is. He puts on his mesh shirt and his half glove and his bandana and like all the 80s accoutrements that you just would have loved to have been able to wear back in those days when you were a kid. And it's really not a great movie, but it's got such great action shots.
It's called Alphabet City.
Alphabet City, yeah.
I feel like it's on my list of movies. Is it an Italian knockoff?
No, it was by Amos Poe, who basically started out as kind of like a Andy Warhol, Paul Morrissey kind of like experimental East Village filmmaker. And then he was given like a budget to do like a commercial movie. And so it's like a semi-gangster crime movie, but it's very sort of like languid and, it gets kind of action oriented towards the end. It's got Michael Winslow in it doing his pre Police Academy voice sound effects. He plays like a dealer.
Do you watch any of the Death Wish films?
Have I? I must have definitely seen Death Wish, the original. When I went to film school, I had a bunch of friends who were like, they were the trash cinema gurus. We would literally drive out. This was in Tallahassee at Florida State. We would drive out to the mom and pop shops that still had like all these obscure old releases that only came out once in the 80s. So we saw things like Hollywood Man and just all kinds of just obscure weird shit that probably now somebody like Vinegar Syndrome or somebody is putting out like on Blu-ray. But I did a whole independent study in Death Wish and Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, and Freebie and the Bean, and just any kind of trashier than that even. But I did that whole diving into it. Also like the Italian horror, Lucio Fulci and stuff like that. So I think in there I did some of the Death Wishes, but I don't think I ever went too deep. Maybe one and maybe two, but I don't know.
Oh, I definitely went full Death Wish, and I watched all of them, and 2 now is my new favorite.
I've heard great things about 3. In fact, Edgar Wright and Tarantino did this podcast over the pandemic where they were just going back and forth. Like, you see this, you see that. Yeah, I love
Death Wish 3 is like Charles Bronson as Kevin McAllister from Home Alone.
Okay, so he sets up like a lot of traps.
Yes,
fall into. Okay.
I wish I was lying. Yes.
That's cool. I like traps, I guess.
By the time you get to Death Wish 5, you're like, who is trying to test this man who has, on a bi-coastal level, taken out multiple criminal organizations? In Death Wish 4, he took out 3 criminal organizations.
Whole organizations.
Whole orgs. Everyone.
So it's like Dirty Harry is like the local cop. He's like the federal cop. He's taking out
He's an architect.
Yeah.
He's an architect.
He's an architect. Yeah.
He's an architect with a pistol. And sometimes he gets a grenade launcher somehow. I don't know where he gets it from, but he just has it. And yeah, Death Wish 3. I watched Death Wish 3 and I couldn't stop laughing because first of all, and I've lived in and I'm from kind of a bad neighborhood, and I've seen bad neighborhoods in various parts of the world, but I've never seen criminals like the ones in the Death Wish movies. And that's what I live for. I live for these portrayals of
You mean like
inner city crime.
just guys who just deserve to die, just clearly deserve to die?
I don't know if they deserve to die or if they deserve like a dance scene, because these guys all kind of walk around like dance. Like what criminal wears that outfit? This guy's got a half shirt on and parachute pants.
I recently saw The Mechanic. That is another
73 or whatever, 75.
Yeah, you know, I occasionally sprinkle those kind of movies in there. I can't say it was great, but you know, it's the same basic thing. Like he's a driver, but he's also a talented murderer.
If you show me a film and revenge has to be enacted and Charles Bronson is in it, I'm there. Like I don't Death Wish. He signed a deal with Canon when Canon was signing all those big names. When they signed Stallone, they signed Dolph Lundgren. When they signed all these guys to these big ass deals, they just crapped out so many movies. There's so many Charles Bronson movies that are the same movie.
Yeah,
he has like 15. You could call them all Death Wishes, but they're like, he's not an architect in this one. He's a cop that is too.
I'm looking on Letterboxd, and it says Charles Bronson has 102 movies, and I've watched 11. So. But I will say this: he is in my favorite Sergio Leone movie, not Clint Eastwood. Once Upon a Time in the West is my favorite of all of his movies. Now, do I think it would have been better had it been Eastwood instead of Bronson? Yeah, but I still think the movie is his best movie. And Bronson does okay. He does okay. It's just I can't get over something about his, I don't know, maybe it's the lisp. I'm not sure what his he's not quite as menacing as
he's too stoic, maybe. He's a little too almost statuesque in some of his portrayals of tough guy.
Some people just call that like, you know, bad acting. But you know. He didn't destroy that movie enough that's still my favorite Sergio Leone movie.
So are you not a fan of Canon films?
Well, I can't be too mad at Canon films because I think they did Love Streams, the John Cassavetes last movie.
They had Cassavetes, yeah.
So they did whatever they used their money for. Some of it was for good and some of it was for evil.
The Breakin' movies.
It's those two Israeli dudes, right? They're
Menachem
Golan and Globus, right? Yeah. There's a real funny documentary that I think
Electric Boogaloo.
No. You want to keep trying though, because this is fun.
That's what it's called. It's called Electric Boogaloo.
No, there's a not that one that's not on Canon Films. That's I want to see that one. But there's another documentary about I think it's about
how anti-Palestinian they were.
No, but that's obviously given, I'm sure.
Yeah, I didn't realize that someone that man passed away made a whole movie.
Well, did they do Delta Force? Did they? Yep. Yeah. So there you go. You know, but no, it's. I'm only telling you this so you can find the scene where Golan and Globus are there. It's about some filmmakers going to Cannes Film Festival trying to raise money for like a fake movie, basically.
That sounds genius.
And it is. But I think it might be Seymour Cassel, who's like in some of those Cassavetes movies. It's been a while since I saw it, but there's a scene where they hit them up and they're trying to like really ply them for money, and they're just really funny. They're going like, "Remember we made all of those great movies with the John, and let's be in business again." And, you know, they're like real, well, schmoozers is the word, but
the way they were able to fund that studio by owning property rights to things like Spider-Man and saying like, look, if you buy, like they were like, if you buy, you know, I don't know, this Charles Bronson movie called 10 to Midnight, we'll make sure you get Spider-Man first and these other superhero properties we have. You know,
that's smart. Yeah. I mean, look, I would love it if someone had the, like they made a Cassavetes movie when nobody wanted to give him a dime. He was getting ill, and he was making these weird, non-commercial kind of adult movies about aging people and their regrets and things. Like, it's not exactly sexy, and they knew enough. They had enough taste to say, we'll do the trash in order to fund some of this gold. I wish somebody could do that today.
I feel like the people behind movies, kind of like the people behind music, are just so driven by the dollar. They come from a different world.
Well, and that is, again, this wraps back to what we're saying. It's always been that way, but the people running the studios now are just like, they're corporate raiders. They're not even people that actually started the studios or in any way know anything about production. They just know about buying and selling of companies, right? So they're corporatizing, they're financializing, they're not even when like Charlie Chaplin had to break off and make a United Artists because he wasn't feeling like he had enough control over his movies. Even at that time, those studio bosses were thought of themselves as filmmakers. They thought the movie should be commercial enough to make money and so on and so forth, but they at least had the pretension to being creative in the business. Now it's the same that's affected all these other industries. It's just the financialization of a company being, stripped for parts basically and crushed into just pure money making. There's no other value at all, to the extent that there ever was.
And this, I'm going to ask you this last question.
No problem. We've gone long. So
someone wants to know if you've seen the movie. Have you seen the movie Life is Hot in Crackdown?
Life is Hot?
Life is Hot in Crackdown.
Oh, Life is Hot in Crackdown.
Yeah.
No. What is it? Does somebody want to tell me about it? I can look it up.
It is my biggest failure as the guy that runs a channel and that does movie night. And movie night was supposed to be like this fun experience. And someone, so I do patron calls. If you're a certain level of patron, there's a call, and one of the people on the patron calls mentioned this movie to me, and I was like, I've never heard of it. And I read a bunch of reviews for it, and the reviews were all really glowing. And so I was like, let's watch this movie because I'm sure it's going to be horrible. But I thought it was going to be horrible in that like Charles Bronson revenge way. And it was horrible in a way that I wasn't ready for anything to be horrible. I really felt bad because there were scenes in it that I wasn't ready for. Like it opens with a rape. Like, not like in Penitentiary, but in this way, they're like, I don't think that's how that would ever happen. And that was really unnecessary. And why didn't you pee on him?
Well, now I definitely got to see it.
There's these kids that are supposed to be poor, and they have an apartment with like a bathroom in it, but they just walk around with dirt smudged faces and dirty clothes all the time.
Sounds like a real phony baloney movie kind of.
There's a black person that says the N-word with a hard R.
That's really going over the line.
But I made the guy playing the movie for us, Jeremy Salmon. God bless Jeremy Salmon.
Were you punked by being given this movie?
The guy that so again, we have a monthly patron call, and I remind him like, hey, didn't know about all the, and he was like, I'd never seen it because I just heard the name. I never watched it. I thought the name was funny.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But so now I have to watch the movie first because I don't want anyone seeing it. We were like, it was like the Zapruder film with the hard R. I was like, you have to rewind that, please.
Did he just say the full word?
He said the R was so hard. And these kids did things to people. It was like, hey, old man, we're going to take your Social Security check.
What years was this movie from?
Like 2008.
Oh, God.
You should have known better. And all the reviews, like, this is the most gritty portrayal. They were like, I'm from the inner city, and this is the way it is. I was like, look, I'm from the inner city, and I don't know any thugs that go into senior citizens' houses, beat them up for their Social Security checks, and when they don't have their check because the mail didn't come, give them an enema. Like, I don't know anyone that thinks to do that. Anyone.
Kids in film school. That's who thinks to do it.
Someone said the Butthole Gang. I guess we did call them
the Butthole Gang. They strike again. Call it in. Call in the Butthole Gang task force. We've got another unwanted enema.
Another unwanted enema. Who does that? It was this portrayal of the hood in a way I'm like, look, man, I watched a lot of shitty news reports on various major metropolitan areas because I'm trying to work out this paper that I'm writing.
Interesting.
And I've heard the worst things ever. I recently heard a story, true story, it was in the news, of a woman that decapitated her boyfriend.
Do I want to hear this?
I mean, do you think your wife is one to decapitate you during intercourse?
We did just watch The Realm of the Senses, so no, I don't need to give anybody any ideas.
Well, on that note, then we'll just table that for a private.
Oh, I've got Life is Hot in Cracktown written down on my list, so I will have to subject myself to. It's just life is too short to go deliberately see a movie that everyone tells me is a piece of crap, even if it's like funny crap. Like I haven't seen The Room or some of these other movies made by like outsider artists that are just like too weird.
I saw The Room because I met one of the co-writers of the book about the guy. What's his name? What's the guy's name?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, hi, Mark. That guy.
The guy who made it.
Yeah, and I thought that was they told me the craziest story ever. So I saw The Room, which I didn't get it. I didn't even get why it was. I didn't think it was so bad. It was funny. I was like, I just don't get this. But yeah, like I will watch 1-star movies. I look for 1-star movies. I'm like, some of these 1-star movies is going to be a gem. Like I watched the movie Night Game with Roy Scheider. It was like a 1-star movie. I was like,
but Roy Scheider, even if he's reading the phone book, he's like at least an interesting actor, right?
He's super interesting, and he was like totally tan in this movie, and just looked like a leather purse, which made it even more like funny.
This was before or after All That Jazz?
After. This was probably like 89, 90.
Oh, okay. So even after Blue Thunder.
Yes, I love Blue Thunder. Also,
saw that with my dad.
Matthew, I used to watch made-for-TV movies.
Well, there was a Blue Thunder TV show too.
You mean Airwolf?
No, Blue Thunder. It was like half a season or one season. Also Airwolf.
Airwolf was great. Rested in peace, Jan Michael Vincent.
Yeah. Who was
some of his most comedic work to me was towards the end of his career when he would just show up drunk as shit.
Well, he
not
was
giving a fuck. Jan Michael
was he in Twin Peaks? Where did I see him?
Oh, was he?
He was like the bartender for a second at the very end there. I know he was in something.
He didn't give a good goddamn about a lot.
He couldn't really like talk towards the end.
Yeah, but yeah, I love a good Jan Michael Vincent in the 80s movie.
I went through my Mystery Science Theater period where like I watched that show religiously. I would record them. I would sit up and cut out the commercials and so on. So I could have them on the tapes and keep circulating the tapes and so on. But I can't watch too many more bad movies anymore. There's just too many good ones that everyone says like, oh, you haven't seen that? This is the best movie ever. All right, well, I got to go see that.
I like finding a gem.
Well, I'll leave that to you, and then you can pass it on to me.
That's what I'll do. I'll be the guy that digs through the turds and goes, "Hey, look, guy, it's a quarter.
I found a piece of corn."
Cracktown is not the corn.
Okay.
Cracktown is not the corn. Jordan Dubin says she has no time for bad movies. They actually make her angry. Really, Jordan Dubin?
I'm with you, Jordan Dubin, whoever you are. But
you watched Lair of the White Worm with me, so take that.
That's not a bad movie. That's a weird one.
It's a weird movie.
But if you like David Lynch, you like Lair of the White Worm, I'd say.
Oh, I watch it, but I can't watch it multiple times. It's too much.
Yeah, it takes a lot for me to watch any movie both times. But Ken Russell, he made The Devils, which is one of just the best movies.
Did you like Altered States?
Altered States, that's another one that's great. Head trip of a movie. I saw it before I myself had done any actual like psychedelic drugs, so I probably was more impressed by it than I maybe would have been. And of course, I was thinking of it the first time I did mushrooms. Like, is that going to happen? But, that was a great one. But, he turns into a thing and he's in the tank. And, that's... Ken Russell had made some weird movies, but I will defend Lair of the White Worm. It's funny. It's weird.
It is. There are parts that are rather hilarious, especially whenever they play the flute and the people that... Yes. But as someone that lives around snakes, it takes a whole new life now for me. Because I'm also terrified of snakes. The snakes are more terrified of me.
Wait, why do you live around them if you're...
I live in Mexico.
Oh, I see. Just lots of snakes around.
Yeah, like I don't like have them in my house.
Right.
Well, I hope. Hi. Like,
I live around this guy. I live around this.
Oh.
This is my furry monster.
Oh, did you do that dog's hair?
No, are you kidding? He goes to the beauty parlor.
Does that dog have emo hair?
Yeah, he does. He's a very emo dog.
Oh,
it's
my
Dudley.
God. Hi, Dudley. Are you intoxicated like Dudley Moore?
Yeah, or he's Dudley Do-Right. He's like a Mountie. Okay.
I'd rather him be Dudley Moore in the Arthur movies.
Yeah, he does have a drinking problem.
Dudley, he does as he pleases.
Living is tough between the moon and New York City, Dudley.
I wish I could play Christopher Cross now, going out. Matthew, thank you for hanging out with us for a couple hours.
Oh, it was so fun.
This is a lot of fun, man. This is a lot of fun. Last question. What directors should people be watching out for?
My new current favorite filmmaker, who's still making movies. He's made like 30 movies since the mid-90s. Korean filmmaker Hong Sang-soo. He is almost like an outsider artist because he makes almost the same topic over and over and over.
He's not the revenge guy, is he?
No. Okay. No. These are very much about men and women and why men lie to women and why women don't understand men and why men don't understand women. And he messes with structure. So sometimes he'll do one story and then he'll reset it, almost like a sliding doors kind of a thing. Or things will repeat even without it being that like explicitly a reset. So any one of his movies, throw a dart. But if you really want to start with one that will blow your mind, they're almost always about a filmmaker who goes to a town and like meets a fan. It's almost always what happens. So it's sort of like his life in a way, and he improvises them. He writes the script on the morning of, and then he shoots it, and then he goes back, and the next day he writes the next. Yeah, he is a genius, an amazing artist, unique talent. So anything you want to go and do, Hong Sang-soo, definitely check it out. I would say do Right Now, Wrong Then, or Night and Day. Those two. This woman says, or person, Kaga Tio says, there's no way Hong is going to be up Jason's alley. But this person also said that Cassavetes was middlebrow navel gazing, so I don't think you have to listen to. Yeah.
Look, I watch a lot of different kinds of movies when I live alone. So
I think you would love Hong Sang-soo, and he's not like so weird that he's completely inaccessible, but he's unique enough that you could tell he's his own artist. He's got his own voice. You're putting on another person's consciousness when you go into his movies.
Right now, my favorite movies about couples are Asian movies. They've been kind of nailing it for me.
Well, check it out. I mean, Korean movies are getting a lot of heat these days, but to me, Hong Sang-soo is just in his own realm. And plus, people are constantly drinking soju and smoking cigarettes in every one of his movies, so people are drunk all the time. It's like, you just got to see it to believe it.
Well, thank you very much, Matthew.
My pleasure, Jason. Anytime.
Have a very good night. Wherever you guys are watching or will be listening to this show, there'll be links in the description so you too can watch movies with Matthew Flim Guy, learn a little bit about cinema, be as well versed as Matthew. You know, Jordan is over here in the chat talking crap about movies that I watch. She says, Jason watches movies so lowbrow. They're like Happy Trail pube lowbrow. That's mean. I don't think I'm that bad. Taint brow, someone says. Oh my goodness, you guys are just mean people. Just because a man likes to see ninjas in his films doesn't mean he's a bad person. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific time, I will be talking with Doug Lane. We'll be talking about UFOs. Me and Doug Lane, our first time talking in months. We'll be talking about UFOs. It should be fun. Please tune in. Also, this Friday, we're going to be doing movie night. We're going to be watching Fear of a Black Hat. So if you're not a patron, become a patron so you can watch Fear of a Black Hat with us. It's going to be so much fun. And what I love is after we watch the movie, when you guys all chime in and give your 2 cents, it's a pretty good group of people from various generations. So I love to hear your guys' opinions on these films. That being said, thank you so much, Quinn, for making this bomb-ass intro. We are out.
Back when Russia was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and they'd say, "Oh, but aren't you so glad that you're in America?" I said, "Well, I know a lot of Russian filmmakers, and they have a lot more freedom than I have. All they have to do is be careful about criticizing the government."